Hey everybody, welcome to Monday. I'm back mostly. For people who didn't check Twitter or aren't on Twitter, I got shingles. I'm past the contagious phase. I've basically spent 4 days doing nothing but sleep. But I'm in the nerve pain phase. So if you see me kind of go during this video, that's why. I'm still kind of bandaged up, which I admit looks kind of badass. I resisted the urge to post pictures for the patrons. I was gonna do an update, but then I thought, Leanna, perhaps your thinking is compromised by illness. Let's wait until you're better to decide whether you're gonna post pictures of that kind. It is pretty grisly. I did have moments where I wanted to watch David Cronenberg's The Fly to make myself feel better. These are my coping mechanisms. But while I was sick, two things happened. Alan Wake remake officially announced. I missed the solicit for the review codes. So I'm like one of the biggest Alan Wake fans on the planet and missed that, but oh well. But also they dropped a God of War Ragnarok trailer and additional details, and I am super frigging excited. And all the internet wants to talk about is Thor from that. So I'll talk about Thor, but you're going to have to sit through my excite on other things before we get to that. If you like this sort of like shameless, oh my god, I am such an obsessed freaking fan of this series, like from the beginning, from that first Hydra fight, the splattery goodness Hydra fight, I was fucking hooked. If you like this, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. I will be aided today by my Kratos action figure from the original series. I think this was from God of War 3. He's wearing like the armor. This isn't his classic look. This is like, you know, when he levels up kind of look, which I think is important because if you look at the screens, I'll show in a bit. Anyway, I know people want to talk about Thor. I know all the internet is talking about Thor because some people are pissed he doesn't look like Chris Hemsworth. We're going to do other things first. All right. The first thing, I was happy to see Mimir back. I love Head, and I was happy to see him back. They have set up the story with tantalizing clues. Let's start with the fact that Tyr figures prominently. This is a big thing for me. In the connection that Tyr has as there are many theories that Tyr is a borrowed deity from the Romans. Tyr was Mars in Rome. The equivalent to Mars in Greek mythology is Ares. And Tyr is a big dude that looks like he's been imprisoned for a while. So could Tyr be Ares, who's actually not dead? I looked it up. He kind of looks kind of similar. Can't rule it out because, of course, they have that little teaser in the trailer that Tyr's not dead. Odin went through a lot of trouble to make it seem like Tyr was dead. And Odin is voiced by Richard Schiff. Who is Richard Schiff, you may ask? He's, what's his name? Dr. Glassman on The Good Doctor. He's Dr. Sean Murphy's mentor. So him voicing Odin, that is a statement. There is more, however. The introduction of, I am going to butcher this name, but Angerboda, in Norse myth is all over the place. So Loki in Norse myth has a bunch of kids from two different characters. One of them is Angerboda, and she's Jotun. So the fact that they have her played by, oh my god, I am so freaking excited, Layla Hayes, who is the daughter from The Equalizer. She is just so cool. I was like, I know that. I know her. I know that face. And I'm like, yeah, she's the daughter from The Equalizer. But they're not taking a Norse character and race swapping them, she is not, she is not a Norse god. She is Jotun, and we don't know what the Jotun giants look like. We never see Laufey in the first game. Laufey is, well, depending on the myth, a lot of people would say Laufey is gender swapped, but not in every myth. And that one was like staring me in the face the whole time. I figured out Atreus was Loki with the mistletoe, but I missed the Fae thing, and I'm like, how did I miss that? It was right in front of me the whole time. But it's super exciting that they managed to work that in, have her be sort of immediately look like you're not from around here, because she's not. She's from Jotunheim. Well done, God of War dev team. Well freaking done. That is cool. That is the way to do it right. Because we don't know what the frost giants look like. We've never actually seen them. We see the freaking mountain. We know it's really big. But anyway, enough about that. The thing about Tyr and then Angerboda is that Angerboda is the mother of Fenrir. And in the Norse myth, Fenrir bites off Tyr's hand, I believe. And so that is like, okay, there's sort of a natural crash course they're setting up here. Which is interesting because of the way they played with the myths. The first time around, the fact that we see Tyr bound, we see him kind of locked up, him sacrificing his hand to free himself could happen metaphorically now that we have his mother in the game. We already have the world serpent. We already have Jormungand, so they're not going to adhere too closely. Is Fenrir going to be a weapon? How are we going to work that in? They don't completely ignore the myths. In God of War, they play with the fact that especially Norse myth, so freaking fluid. Sometimes it's one thing, sometimes it's another. And that brings me to the whole Thor thing. And why I don't understand why this was the thing that people talked about, and not the words "war is not the only way" coming out of Kratos' mouth, as physically he looks closer to the way, like, he slimmed down, his armor's different, he is starting to shift back into who he was in Greece as they get closer and closer to war. And he's got this son who, okay, Atreus is his Greek name, but kid is Loki, son of Laufey. Shit's going down, and there's this whole thing at the end where Kratos sees that, thing, the picture on the wall, and he decides to just ignore it and go on with things, because fuck fate. But I'm like, and all people want to talk about is fucking Thor. Now, if you've missed why people want to talk about Thor, getting sick has made me, less and less want to dive into these things. But I think it's really important, because it's just silly to get freaked out because Thor looks like this. I mean, I think Thor may be a bit of a fake out in terms of his significance in the game. See my nerding about Tyr. But, I was like, yeah, he looks like a strong man. If you've ever watched any of those strongman competitions, this is what physically strong people look like. When you get all bodybuilded out like that, you kind of explode your muscle fibers. That's for look, not for strength, right? And you'll see again, Kratos is leaner Kratos is leaner in this game. It's like he's getting back literally into fighting form, super exciting. So, like, maybe it's a metaphor that Thor's gotten kind of lazy too. But he is back to being a ginger, which is not the way it is in Marvel Comics. And I don't want anybody to claim I'm slagging Marvel Comics. You guys know I love the original Thor movie, like, a little too much. But that's the Marvel Comics version, not the Norse myth version. And we have to sort of give a nod to the fact that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been kind of playing in a sandbox of somebody's cultural myths. There goes my nose. And you know, if it was any non-white culture, people might have something of an issue with them deciding that, you know, they're pre-Christian deities or aliens now, and their mischief god is a fascist, and their thunder god is now exploring space with the Guardians of the Galaxy. You know, just saying, it's been, not to get, this is said in jest, kind of, it's been a little insensitive. You know, they took out Fin Fang Foom because of the connection to Yellow Peril, and they did the big thing with, you know, the Mandarin now being Wenwu in Shang-Chi, but, you know, the Norse gods, fair game, they're white people, right? Which we all know, we live in a society, this is the world we live in, but still, I talked on Twitter to many actually, like people from Sweden and Norway and places like that who are like, no, this is how he is described, having an enormous appetite and red hair. I mean, you can tell the Vikings ended up right. In my genealogy somewhere, strangely, I did one of those ancestry tests and not very much came up in that regard. Shocked the shit out of me, but it must have been in there somewhere long ago. But yeah, I don't understand. I mean, someone at Forbes wrote a defense of Thor. This Thor does not need a defense. I don't know why we're going through this again. There was all this outraging and hue and cry and rending of garments when the first Dad of War came out, with both sides of the culture war. One was, oh my god, it's not as violent, they've done and the other was like, it's still too violent, and nobody was satisfied. And the God of War team just kept on trucking and put it a freaking amazing game, and everyone promptly forgot they'd shit on this game for months beforehand. And I can't stand that. As somebody who was a games journalist for years and years, and somebody who now makes games, this bothers me, okay? This is just like, what the fuck? We have to stop this. People shouldn't have to defend this version of Thor. What I think people need to defend is their needing a pagan god to be only one thing at any given time. Again, reminding you that the Norse gods are not aliens and mischief gods are not fascists. Like they make Loki in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I really think the burden of proof is on the people. And I know people who are like, no, I want my gods to look ripped. I don't want them to look realistic. I don't think this is realistic. I think this is a character point. And my Telegram is going off because I forgot to turn it off. I think this is a character point. To me, because we've got Svelter Kratos, I think we've got another god who kind of let himself go over the years, right? And we've got super skinny, super tall Tyr, right? Who's been locked away forever. And if you know anything about Norse myth, Norse myth is full of like epic scenes of torture. Um, they explain earthquakes in one myth with Loki's other wife. I don't know if it's pronounced Sigyn or Sigun, but he gets like chained up and there's like this venomous snake dripping on, and his poor wife's got to stand there with a bowl, right? Stopping like venom from dripping on her husband's head. Cause yeah, she signed up for that. And every so often she has to change the bowl and Loki yells, and that's why there's earthquakes. Grisly stuff, right? But, it is fluid. And so this looks to me like a guy who's like, I'm the god of thunder. The god of war is dead. So sort of by default, I'm the dude. And he just sort of took advantage of that. Because he isn't just like a big dude. He's kind of sweaty. And I do think the juxtaposition between clearly well-fed, voracious appetite Thor, correct with the myth, and Svelter Kratos, I don't think that's an accident. They don't do this stuff by accident, especially now since it seems like Freya, it is Freya, right? It's not Frigga. It's Freya. Seems to be an antagonist this time around. Like, she's pretty pissed her son's dead, which, I mean, okay, I see her point of view. And it seems like based on the fact that it's Atreus trying to figure out who he is in the whole grand scheme of things, that's probably not going to be fun for him. He's going to have to put on the big boy pants pretty quickly. But if it is sort of that character study with the father-son relationship that the first game is a continuation, seeing Kratos slip back into the old him, as opposed to the distant but caring father he was in the first game. And I mean, the callback right at the beginning when Atreus comes in with that dead buck. You all remember that scene where Kratos teaches him how to hunt and kill, and in the first game, like, it's a big callback to, hey, remember where we started. I do think there's signs of that. There's a lot of like tantalizing details in this freaking trailer. But if that is so, then these characters are not just designed to look cool. They're designed to create specific settings to advance this central relationship between a father with a very, very dark past that he's sort of sliding into. Remember what happened to Kratos' first kid? And the son who is fated to have a pretty dark future. And is this fate, or is this because his father is slipping back into that old, Atreus says at one point where you stop thinking like a father and start thinking like a general. There's hints that is sort of something Kratos forced to do. What does that do based on the example he gives his son? Interesting. And are they going to dovetail Kratos' present with his past through Tyr/Ares? And we don't really know what Ares looks like without like the flaming fucking hair, right? It could be him. Maybe not. Could be Roman. There's a lot of god pantheons still to slaughter. There was a thing that they showed like Egypt and maybe Rome. I don't know. But like there's a lot of places to go, and they're definitely playing with the fact that these gods kind of migrated like Kratos did. And why does Odin want to pretend that Tyr is dead? Why is he protecting Tyr and yet imprisoning him at the same time? And why was Thor the one that showed up at the end of the last game? Other than it was an oh my god Thor thing. Because I mean we all know in the myth Thor bites it at the hands of Loki and Agrabah's other kid, but who's already in the game. So obviously there's going to be some slicing and dicing and moving around, but tantalizing clues in the trailer. Maybe you can see now why I'm kind of bummed that the conversation is just circling the bowl over the way Thor looks. Now, there is a silver lining. There is a silver lining that I thought, remember, I have been out of it. I have been very ill. And I said to my husband, there were about 4 days there. It was like the whole world was made of grape jelly. So this is the way my mind is processing things through that. But I actually started laughing at one point and went, holy shit. The gaming internet is finally freaking out that a dude isn't hot. Instead of a female character. It shows that perhaps it doesn't have as much to do with gender as everyone assumed, and more to do with there are just certain, almost like, you know, people might know that I did some modeling for a game called Battle Station Specific. I was a bomber girl pinup model for that game. You could slap me on the side of your plane in the game. It was an IDOS game back in the day. And I literally got the gig because I walked into the booth as a journalist, and the PR guy was like looking at me and looking at the wall and looking at me and looking at the wall. And he goes, you look like that. Let's talk. Okay. Awesome. But it was one of those things. It's like, well, I actually do pinup modeling. Awesome. It was great. We'll talk about that another time. But pinup modeling for that period, World War II pinup art, was basically using naked ladies, because when we started talking about historical accuracy, I'm like, well, it can't be an accurate shoo baby. That chick's naked. They're like, yeah. And the only thing we have to tell you is don't straddle the bomb, because the ESRB won't let us do that. Okay. But you know, those lewds were painted on the side of planes in part to take soldiers' minds off the fact that, yeah, they could fucking die. And so there's sort of like a patron saint, a talisman attitude towards that. And maybe we have to start, you know, like I talked about in Boss Fight, have to start skewing our thoughts about what these things are. Like, you know, maybe I maintain waifu's not pervy. Waifu's no different than the way, you know, teenage girls obsess over boy bands. Yes, some people with waifus are much older than teenage girls, but still, no one is required to get into a real life relationship before they're ready. It's good practice. Or in the case of some people who responded, made them realize they were trans. That's still mind-blowing to me. But, you know, maybe we have to think about the freaking out about these characters not as some, you took away my fap, and more, you took away my comfort. I am not a Thor person. I am my don't fuck it up character in Marvel is the Thing. Also Beast, but that already got fucked up. I didn't see the last Fantastic Four movie. I just don't know. If somebody tells me it's really good and the Thing is really good, I'll watch it. Otherwise, I'll be a fucking asshole about it. But that's not because, you know, I find the Thing sexually attractive. I feel an affinity for that character on, you know, he was basically Jack Kirby's self-insert in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I won't get into all the reasons I'm like super defensive of that. But, you know, maybe these characters that are getting essentially, the term I keep hearing is nerfed, you know, instead of being these kind of bombshell characters. Now they're kind of, They don't make the same aggressive statement. And maybe this isn't about, because I kept, with Mortal Kombat, I kept hearing Melina as waifu, and I'm like, that's weird. Your waifu wants to eat you, but I think that was the joke. But waifu isn't tits or GTFO. Waifu is we worship you, we put you on a pedestal, we put you above all others. There was something about that character that just and her epic butterface, that if you don't know what butterface is, everything's good butterface. Sexist, I know, but there you go. Product of the hangover from the 90s. But maybe not sexist, but you know what I mean, objectifying. Judging based on appearance. But, there's something to that character that people she's not Miss Perfect like Kitana. She's the girl that got the shit deal, right? Maybe there's something to that. And I do not know why some guys are so connected to the Marvel version of Thor. And I don't have to, because, Thor is not my brofu. I have other characters that I'm like, no, there is one interpretation and it is right? So, well, I really like the God of War Thor. And I would like the detractors to give it another look in the context of the game, because remember, everybody was like, I don't know. Well, I wasn't. I was like, yeah, he stabbed him with his own horn. I actually went up and shook everybody's hand at the behind closed doors at the original Dad of War. I'm like, oh my god, I want to, because I'm so stoked for this game. When everybody was too violent, this is toxic masculinity, all that stuff, I was like, no, man, no. And they were so confused. They were all like, what's going on? But a lot of women, right, work on the God of War games. But, I don't want to... I am having fun with this debate, not making fun of the people who are really sort of attached to buff Thor. Because I admit at first I was sort of like, well, Freya's not very interesting looking, and then I realized that's sort of the point. They're going with that on this one. And I won't get into reasons why, but you sort of have this reaction and go, no, give it a chance. I don't quite know why this became such a big debate, but this is my, I guess, sort of nerd stoicism, having been around for so long, so very long, where it's like, this Thor not being the other Thor doesn't take away Marvel Thor. I mean, my god, have you seen those production stills from Love and Thunder? Hemsworth is ripped, really ripped. Look it up. I was like, wow. But we have that. That's not going away anytime soon. They did a Marvel What If where they pointed out his shiny hair. So to me, just doing that again, I don't see anything being gained by telling another story with the exact same Thor. That doesn't serve anything. That doesn't create anything new. Why bother? If you're just going to copy Marvel, leave it out. You don't need that. It's done. It's reductive. It's copycatting. It's not telling your own story. And I know some people are really wedded to fan service, but we talk about games just tell a good story. Don't pander. Don't get mired in the politics. That is really difficult when people are going to have a bad reaction because one thing is so in their head. But it's in service of the work. And so please I get that some people are like, that's not what I want Thor to be, but please go easy on the devs of this game. Because I know firsthand it's tough when you release something and it's just a preview and people like, yeah, I jumped to a ton of conclusions, but I admit they're all theories and I'm using it to get like super excited about the game, not dislike, right? That's as much as you try to stay stoic about it, as much as you try to just keep on keeping on, put your head down. That takes the wind out of people's sails. That's something they worked really hard on and clearly a lot of care went into, was met with a bunch of fighting. That's not why people make games. People make games for people to have enjoyment. And yes, you have to tell yourself, well, this is some people's idea of fun. Still, it's a bummer. So maybe somebody on the God of War team will see this and see me freaking out about like every other little minute detail, including Mimir on that little pillow. I'm like, hee, Mimir. Anyway, fangirl moment over. Kratos action figure. Super, super stoked. I need a new God of War t-shirt. My God of War 3 t-shirt is like my equivalent of like that Grateful Dead shirt from the 70s. It's like falling apart and I can't bring myself to get rid of it. But anyway, I've gone on long. Remember, I am still ill, but interested in what you guys think. And help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching.